It's weird bringing you good news multiple days in a row. Actually, it's weird bringing good news. And yes, I will address the rather spicy comments from Pope Francis yesterday, the ones he gave to some Italian priests in charge of seminaries. I'll have to be very careful how we talk about it because he used a word in that we can't use on any social media platform without getting in a whole lot of trouble. But we'll talk about that, but after we get to the actual news of the day. And that news is that the Jesuits are in steep decline. An extraordinary document was issued in the form of a speech given by a prominent Jesuit warning that the Jesuit order, the Society of Jesus, they're not getting anywhere near the number of vocations that they need to keep the organization going. Some extraordinary causes are outlined in the document itself. It's in Spanish, and unfortunately, even the best online translating system I tried to use couldn't translate the document. It kept repeating the same lines of text over and over again. It was weird. So we're going to have to rely, instead of using the actual text itself, to use the Catholic News Agency report on this. And from there, we will pivot after that to Francis's spicy language. But for now, we get from Catholic News Agency this headline: Prominent Jesuit. The Society of Jesus is in a profound decline. Yeah, and the kinds of things he says in this, what I could take out in the actual document is that they're getting about enough vocations to meet those that are retiring. But once you factor in the ones who are passing away also, or who are leaving the order, they're shrinking. The Jesuits are the largest order in the church, without any hesitation. The SSPX are like number 2 or 3 behind the Jesuits, and the Jesuits are in decline. This has been predicted for a long time, actually, because nobody really wants what the modernists are selling anymore, and the Jesuits are essentially the poster child for modernism in the church today. So they're in steep decline. And the other thing that they casually brush aside in this is that young seminarians, the ones they're getting, tend to be much more conservative as Jesuits. They actually are recognizable as Jesuits historically, as opposed to whatever it is they are now. The Jesuits are not happy about this. This is a warning from one of the most influential Jesuits in the church. So let's go to it. And his name is Father Julio Fernandez Tequera. So let's start going over the article. Quote, Father Julio Fernandez Tequera, a Jesuit priest and rector of the Catholic University of Uruguay, has written a widely circulated critical essay about the Society of Jesus, warning that the order, founded by St. Ignatius of Loyola in 1534, is in, quote, deep decline. The essay by the 57-year-old priest is titled Ad Usum Nostrorum 3, for our use 3, addressed to his Jesuit brothers. The document, which originally circulated within the Society of Jesus, was recently published by the Spanish journalist Francisco Jose Fernandez de la Cigoña on his blog Info Vaticana. This is the third document in a series that Fernandez began in 2022 when he wrote his initial essay Ad Usum Nostrorum, noting that for a long time he has felt dissatisfied with the situation in the Society of Jesus, while making it clear that he's not going through a vocational crisis, nor is he thinking about leaving. He published a second essay a year later in April 2023. In that text, he expressed his appreciation for the many responses he received, also from young Jesuits, and even from some who didn't agree with him, but thanked him for the opportunity to debate and propose a revision of the order. The third essay by Fernandez is dated April 22nd. The new text has the subtitle, Some Considerations About the De Statu Societatis 2023, on the state of the Society, in reference to the general report produced by the Superior General of the Society of Jesus. In this case, a Venezuelan priest, Arturo Sosa, in collaboration with the procurators who assessed the state of the order, who met in May of last year in Loyola, Spain. So let's pause for a second. This has been an ongoing project of his for 3 years now. And he is very concerned, and has been very concerned, about the state of the Jesuits, to the point where he was willing to reach out to other Jesuits, many of whom won't agree with him about the state of things. But he does not hold back. In this, as you can see on screen, he talks about Jesuits and the McCarrick problem. Later on, he just comes out and says it, that the Jesuits are too political, that they look like an NGO, not a or activist. And he goes there. I have no doubt in my mind that this is a somebody who would be even mistaken for a traditionalist by any stretch. But the fact that they're acknowledging these problems is a good start. How the Jesuits receive this message is anyone's guess, especially since they tend not to publicize this stuff. It's amazing that this was made public, and it turns out that the document was given to the person running Info Vaticana. I have a copy of it. It's a PDF, which is part of the reason I'm having trouble translating it. Anyway, the society is experiencing very worrying situations that seem not to have been addressed in the congregation of procurators and that do not appear clearly and are not taken up in the De Statu report. To give some examples, in December 2022, we learned about what an Italian Jesuit called the Rupnik tsunami, Fernandez noted in his essay. Marco Rupnik is a priest who was expelled from the Society of Jesus in 2023, accused since 2018 of having committed serious acts of the flesh, spiritual and psychological maltreatment of a heinous kind against at least 20 nuns, let's not sugarcoat this, nuns, in the Loyola community that he co-founded in Slovenia, and who continues to appear as a Jesuit and Vatican consultant in the 2024 Pontifical Yearbook. Let's pause here. There are people posting now, every time a feast day comes, in the last month, every time there's a feast day of any notable kind, screenshots from the Vatican News website on Twitter. They'll post these on Twitter, and they show that the Vatican's news, the BBC of the Vatican, is using Rupnik's art as the banner for the news article about the feast day. They're officially using his artwork. And some people did some digging, as I reported last week, I think, that a personal friend of his, like a 20-year friend of his, is the one running Vatican News. And that's why. The Vatican still uses his artwork for official things. In fact, there's a basilica, I think in South America or in Europe, that has announced, has just unveiled a whole host of new Rupnik art. So, again, he's not a Jesuit anymore, but he is an albatross that hangs around them. Fernandez then referred to the scandal of the McCarrick problem committed by some Jesuits in Bolivia and the alleged cover-up by some provincials who were accused by the prosecutor's office of that country. We've had to find out about everything through the press, and we have not received a single statement or letter from the General Curia explaining what happened or to ask for prayers for the province of Bolivia. The main Jesuit in this case is the late Alfonso Prejajas, also known as Padre Pica, who kept a diary about the things he did involving 80 people who were very, very young. 80. Jesuit. Fernandez pointed out in his most recent essay that other urgent issues that were not dealt with clearly and forcefully are the drop in the number of admissions to the society, which in the West worsens year by year, as well as the high number of members leaving the order. Recently, a friend told me that 72 novices entered the province in the last 10 years. In this period, the number of Jesuits who left the society in his province were 71, he said, adding that in 2023, 314 novices entered the entire society, and 319 passed away. Now, I don't think those are the novices who passed away. I think those are actual Jesuit priests and members of the lower Jesuit orders who passed away. The priest also noted that there are currently 13,995 Jesuits and lamented that in a few years the society will have disappeared from several European countries and will become insignificant in others in Europe, America, and Oceania. The only growth is in Africa. In 2013, there were more than 17,200 Jesuits, which means that in just over 10 years, the Society of Jesus has decreased by more than 3,000 members. For the Uruguayan priest, the problem is not only that many pass away and few enter, but also that we do not know how to retain many of those who enter. The reason we do not have vocations is not because of the secularized society, the changing times, and 1,000 other excuses. The reason is that these conditions of our time have cowed us. They overwhelm us, and we do not know how to respond to today's challenges with the drive and creativity of yesterday, he pointed out. End quote. That is the universal problem in the church. And there is an answer, and they don't like it. And that's give up on this experiment of being nice to the world, adopting the world's values. adopting the world's philosophies, being nice to other religions. Stop with that stuff. Start having the Catholic Church act like the Catholic Church again. Bring reverence back to the Mass. Unfetter the traditional Mass. Places with reverent Novus Ordo Masses and the traditional Mass tend to have better vocations. That's basically part of the solution. But also, have the Catholic Church start acting like the Catholic Church on the world stage again. And that's relevant here because here he talks about how the Jesuits are now more akin to a progressive NGO. An NGO is a non-governmental organization. Think Catholic Charities as an NGO. Think Mercy Corps as a secular one. Think Special Olympics as a secular one. The Jesuits and much of the church act more like that than they do a religious organization, and it's crushing the Jesuits now. Quote, according to Fernandez, the vision of the General Report on the Society of Jesus, quote, could perfectly be the view of the world of a secular think tank with ties to a left-wing political party or progressive NGO. One does not find in that evaluation any of the supernatural or transcendent outlook that would be expected from a religious, apostolic, and priestly order, he lamented. There are many signs in the current life of Jesuit ministries and the documents that are published and the guidelines that are given that give the impression that we are an NGO and not in a religious order, Fernandez pointed out. End quote. I love this. He is I don't know where he stands on anything else, but he is not wrong in the slightest. He has diagnosed the problem in the Jesuits, and he has diagnosed the problem in much of the rest of the church. All you have to do is look at the meetings Francis has with secular world leaders in the Vatican. And I don't mean when he meets heads of state, that popes have done that since time immemorial. I mean hosting their conferences, partnering with them. As I will report to you in the coming days, in a video in the coming days, there is a strong rumor that Francis is coming to America again. And I only bothered to even report on it because the source that is basically confirming it is an American bishop. Okay. You get some good, support on a rumor like that when an American bishop, who is the ordinary of a diocese, is reporting on it. But he's coming here to basically meet with some of the secular powers that be. That stuff is not really Catholic. The way the church is run and has been for decades isn't really Catholic. This has gotten worse as time has gone by. These conferences aren't really new to Francis. He just does more of them than people did before him. And it has to stop. The Jesuits read like this. Somebody posted something on Twitter about synodality yesterday. And I just retweeted it, basically saying this sounds like the stuff I read in grad school, because it did. Except they were talking about synodality and the movement of the Holy Spirit, but it was written in bureaucratic language. What are we doing? Is this the Catholic Church, or is this Mercy Corps? Quote, as Fernandez sees it, the Society of Jesus is in deep decline. It doesn't know it, or it doesn't want to know it, which is the same thing. It wants to believe that this is the situation of all the other realities of the church that surround it, and that therefore it is what it should be. In his opinion, the Society's leadership fears that if it speaks clearly to the entire order, its members will suffer and become discouraged. The leaders prefer to maintain the fiction that things are going well rather than risk recognizing the religious and apostolic decline of the Society. Regarding the Jesuits' 2023 General Report, Fernandez pointed out that in the entire long document of more than 24,000 words, the word priest never appears, and only twice priesthood, although only to make a reference distinguishing between priesthood in the Society and the diocesan priesthood. I think our attitude is self-destructive. We want vocations for the priesthood, but we don't want to point out. Toward the end of the essay, Fernandez recalls the Jesuits, quote, have wonderful and necessary charism for the church, a religious, apostolic, and priestly charism. We have to recover it and live it with passion, boldness, and generosity. To achieve this, it is necessary to speak more freely, express clearly what we experience and think, and stop being politically correct. This is great. In conclusion, Fernandez expresses his prayer that God would grant us in this time a living hope to believe that if we put ourselves in his hands and are faithful, we can still rise again and once again be a great service to the truth. Can we have more of that, please? More of this self-assessment by the various orders in the church, by the Vatican, that the things that they have been doing are not working, and it's time to stop. That is what he's called to do. Again, I know nothing else about this priest, what it is, what stands he takes, but this is critical to turning around the decline in the church. Lisa Evers asked, what is the Jesuit charism? I could not tell you. I don't know. Matthew Blackledge says, after bashing the conservative Catholics, don't think you'll get a good response if he does come here. I don't think it's going to be a visit like the last time. Philip says, the FSSP here in Spain has 1 priest, 9 Spanish seminaries in Germany, and 2 more young men discerning in our small chapel as well. Ratios are much different in this Spanish-speaking country. Yeah, I mean, vocations aren't great anywhere. They're better in the traditional orders, but they're not great anywhere, really. Someone says the bishop, but he that was a long time ago. That happened a while ago. He has some theological issues with some actual declarations from a council back in one of the early apostolic councils. I chose not to really talk too much about that because it's also clear that there was divine intervention in what happened with him. But I'm going to now pivot as we talk about Francis's spicy words. And you heard about this yesterday. Without question, you heard about Francis's spicy words. He said something I can't say on YouTube, but I will do my best. I'm going to give you some context, though. The news broke on that yesterday. Social media was ablaze with it. Many tears were had by the modernists and their allies, and much rejoicing by conservative Catholics and traditional Catholics. And it was only myself and Dave Nix who had to remind people, Father Dave Nix, rather, that Francis, has said this before, and that this is Peronism. That's what he does. But still, we'll talk about this. Here's the context, though. Yesterday morning, I bookmarked this tweet from Diane Montagna, who was a journalist who, whenever these synodal meetings would happen, she was the one asking the actual hard questions to the actual bishops and the nuns who were giving speeches at the Synod of Synodality. She posted this yesterday morning before Francis's statements. Just in, a new book, The Breached Dam, the hashtag Fiducia Supplicans surrendered to the James Martin movement, which looks at how, for several decades, a powerful lobby of that kind has been established within the Catholic Church, is being released today. Read it here. And they've got a link. I have links to this already ready to go in my show notes at returntotradition.org. Looks like it's in English. If you want to get a copy of it, you can look up how to get a copy. Here's the press release for the new book, which is being released today at 9 a.m. Eastern in 7 languages, including English and Italian. So let's go over this press release together, shall we? Because this is context for Francis's statement. He has to be aware of this. In a pontificate marked by acts that have caused a stir, have had the global impact of Fiducia Supplicans, the statement of the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith, signed by its new prefect, Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernandez, and personally approved by Pope Francis in December 2023. The document gives the green light to priestly blessings for couples in irregular unions, including those of the double S type. It is unusual for entire episcopates, authoritative cardinals and bishops, professors of moral theology and canon law, countless priests involved in pastoral work, and Catholic faithful scattered across 5 continents to react negatively to an official document of the Holy See. These reactions have forced Cardinal Fernandez and the Pope himself to offer clarifications and specifications, which in general have only added to the perplexity and confusion over the declaration. In fact, as long as what is explicitly written in the declaration is not retracted, what is said in uncertain, sometimes unedited and improvised language seems insignificant to most people. For example, when artificial distinctions are made between a double S-type pairing and a double S-type union. In the context of the unprecedented international controversy caused by Fiducia Supplicans, an in-depth study on how, for several decades, a powerful James Martin lobby has been established within the Catholic Church has been missing. Meanwhile, this lobby has been able to operate skillfully in the field of social activism, as well as in the academic and theological spheres, with the aim of eliminating from Catholic doctrine the gravely sinful character that the Church ascribes to such activities, even to have them approved as authentic signs of Christian love. To fill this gap, the book, available in 7 languages, including English and Italian, by the scholars listed, is being released today. It's 117 pages, agile yet carefully documented. reliably demonstrate that the Argentine prelate's arrival as prefect of the DDF and his resounding declaration Fiducia Supplicans are nothing more than the crowning achievement of the aforementioned project to open up the church to the James Martin sin, carefully carried out within significant sectors of the church. The authors state at the outset that they are not out to denigrate or vilify anyone, least of all those who meritoriously master a tendency that the church defines as objectively disordered. The authors are aware of the vast difference between these persons and those activists who instead present their inclinations as a source of pride, even seeking official approval from the Catholic Church. In the preface to the book, Bishop Robert Mutzerts, a bishop that I have featured the writings of frequently on this channel, auxiliary bishop of, I won't be able to pronounce that, in the Netherlands, asks, can a priest give his blessing to a union the Bible considers sinful? He replies, this is a rhetorical question. A blessing is sought to heal a broken situation in life, not to perpetuate a bad one. One cannot reject God's judgment and moral demands and continue to appeal to his mercy. Thank you, Bishop. The book will be available online in English on several platforms, including Amazon Kindle downloads, starting yesterday. I did not mean to turn this into a commercial for that book. I'm showing you that because that is the context for what Francis said yesterday. And here's, my own tweet on the subject, but we'll start here with Catholic Sat. I cannot read this on YouTube for obvious reasons, but Pope Francis tells the Italian bishops not to admit the James Martin types into the seminary, saying there's already too much redacted, really strong language into the church, and has a link there to the Italian report on it. You've seen it, we'll move on. And I've had to remind people about this, that every year in June, Francis writes James Martin a personal letter telling him that he's doing a great job. Keep it up. Doing great work, Father Martin. That's what he does every year. I know because I've reported on it for you at least 2 or 3 times every year in June. And it always happens in June. You know why it always happens in June. I don't have to tell you. And that letter always ends up getting published on one website or another run by James Martin. Will that happen this year? And my money is on yes, it will happen this year. And so we go to Ed Feser, who, as I will remind people, is a Catholic philosopher and has written books and such. He's, commenting here on Damian Thompson, who is a kind of a conservative Catholic who hosts a podcast. The Holy Smoke podcast is worth your time if you're into that kind of thing. Where he's talking about how this is a big story. The Pope is reported to have used a really bad time of turn for certain kinds of people, as he argues that they should be kept out of seminaries. And Ed Feser says it will be most revealing to see which Team Francis robots will, for this, finally criticize the Pope, despite their judging that he somehow does not merit criticism for the horrific Rupnik problems and the other outrages recently surveyed by Damien in his superb Unheard article. I reported on that article that he's referencing here. It's on the scandals that plague Francis's pontificate. And the James Martin Rupnik stuff is a major, major part of it. And Mr. Thompson has suggested in recent times that Francis has pivoted essentially to the sort of ideological right since Fiducia Supplicans in an attempt to repair what he's done to the church, because it will upend his work. And he's essentially in damage control mode. And I'll remind you that that's part of what Peronists do. They pivot back and forth, ideologically. That's what they do. So it's always nice to see Francis say things that are essentially people who have the faith will generally agree with, even if, frankly, that kind of language is beneath the office that he is alleged to have. But it's worth remembering not to get caught up in it, because we take a very great risk in setting ourselves up for the next time that he issues some sort of radical document that changes the faith some. Another from Ed Feser, where he's quote tweeting, these are modernist accounts, right? One person here's an absolute denial. He just basically says it's almost certainly fake. It's literally a secondary source by an anonymous journalist who heard it from bishops who purportedly heard it from the Pope. It's not very credible. Another person says they don't really believe Francis would ever say anything like that, even though at the bottom there is Christopher Lamb. He is the CNN correspondent and the tablets correspondent to the Vatican. He wouldn't be reporting on it if it was merely a rumor. So yes, Francis said some truly spicy things but it's not the first time. Like 5 years ago or something, he said one of my favorite things he's ever said. And I have to be, again, careful how I say this, so I can't quote him verbatim, but he said, there are too many progressives in the priesthood. By progressive, I mean types. That's what he said. It's not the first time he said this. It's just he goes back and forth. He says one thing and does another. On the people who often have the worst takes and want to see a change to get with the times, I'm totally fine with. Yeah. Let's see. Laura says, wake up, everyone. It's on purpose. And I can't click on it. There it is. Yeah. I think we're lagging again, so we're going to wrap this up here. Just make sure to, I'm trying to troubleshoot my lagging issue, and I'm having some, hopefully took care of it. Let me know in the comments if it's still a problem. I have another solution that I'm waiting on something in the mail to come for. So, but anyway, thanks folks very much for tuning in. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.